Well, we're tracking earnings thick and fast, so let's get you our special segment, Quarter Se Quarter Tak, where we bring you earnings expectations from each sector daily. And today, Ekta has moved across to tell us what one should expect from the pharmaceutical sector for the first quarter. Ekta.
Thanks for that. Well, pharma companies are expected to kick off FY25 with around an 8 to 10% growth in revenue, led by the domestic business, around an 8 to 9% growth in the EBITDA on account of higher expenses being offset by niche launches in the US, and profit growth of around 10 to 13% year-on-year due to lower interest and tax outflow. Now, domestic formulations are expected to lead with a growth of around 10 to 11%. Company-wise, Mankind, along with Torrent Pharma, Dr. Reddy's, JB Chemicals could see good traction in the domestic sales with a growth of as much as 10 to 12%, with Cipla and Sun Pharma at around a 9 to 10% growth. Key drivers for the domestic business include traction in key therapies, new launches, and increase in market rep productivity. Now, the US business is expected to continue to benefit from drug shortages, mid-single digit price erosion, and sale of limited competition drugs such as Revlimid generic. Estimates are that the US could see around a 6 to 7% growth to around $1.2 billion. Now, company-wise, Revlimid generic continues to aid numbers. Cipla's US sales are estimated to grow to $235 million, up 6% year-on-year. Dr. Reddy's to grow 5% on a year-on-year basis, both aided by Revlimid generic. Aurobindo likely to generate $27 million from the drug, which would be similar to last quarter, while Natco could see margins of around 45% aided by the drug. Now, the likes of Lupin is expected to benefit in the US from key drugs such as Spiriva generics, so they could make sales of around $220 million, and the launch of a particular drug used for overactive bladders, Mybetriq. Now, Sun is expected to see growth aided by its specialty portfolio. So, estimates are that the growth could be around 4% Q-on-Q to $282 million in its global specialty sales. Watch for a few more companies, Divi's Labs, which could report around 35% year-on-year growth in sales led by a low base. Biocon could report around 3% Q-on-Q growth in core biosimilar sales. And lastly, commentary on compliance from Aurobindo on UGR3, Cipla on Goa, and Pithampur and Sun on Halol and Dadra facilities. Let's, as always, leave you with the valuations, which on an FY25 basis look quite punchy.
All right, Ekta, thanks a lot for that. Indeed, some of them looking punchy on an FY25 basis. But what's the street factoring in this time around? And what are the stocks that one should be betting on? Vishal Manchanda, who's the Pharma Analyst at Systematix Group, joins in now. Vishal, of the first quarter earnings, what do you think will be your pick of the pack? And what are the key trends that you are expecting from some of the companies, reporting numbers this time around?
So I think the best performer for this quarter should be Zydus Life Sciences, led by the US. So they have a limited competition launch there. So as Ekta said, it's Mybetriq, which is going to be very large for them, and even larger for, so Lupin is the other company that's also going to launch this drug, but Zydus probably is going to do much more out of this opportunity. And the US sales should meaningfully rise for them. So that's going to be the best performer. But as you have indicated, the valuations quite build in all of these upsides that we expect in the US. And again, we know these are not structural opportunities. These opportunities will pass by, and companies will need to replace them. I think the other trend in this quarter we need to watch out for is lower raw material prices. So as we can see, the antibiotic raw material prices have come down meaningfully. And if you look at companies who have large presence in antibiotics, one is Cipla and another is Aurobindo. Alchem is also another company that should benefit out of the lower raw material prices. Another important aspect this quarter is the last quarter, the base quarter last year was on a low base as far as the India business is concerned. So why on a low base? Because the last year we had seen NLEM price revisions and also ceiling price cuts. So that led to a low base, and probably we should see better growth in India on a reported basis. So all of these should help, and Zydus should be the one that should be the strongest.
Okay, so you're expecting Zydus to be the strongest this time. What about Lupin? Sales in the US are expected to probably sustain above $200 million. They have that drug which is used for overactive bladders, Mybetriq generic, which they would have launched as well, which I think Zydus would benefit from, along with Spiriva. So what is your estimate on Lupin? How much of a game changer do you think this drug would be for Lupin and the overall sales estimate?
Yeah. So on Lupin, this drug Mybetriq will not contribute as much as what it would contribute to Zydus. So probably Zydus is going to do a very large number versus what Lupin might do, because like Zydus is doing 2 doses while Lupin is just doing 1 dose of this drug. So, and probably the other dose, Zydus is exclusive, while in the second dose, both Zydus and Lupin are there on the market. So I think Zydus has got an upper hand here in this launch. And what was the other question you said?
Spiriva, their total US sales for Lupin.
Yeah, so on Spiriva, I think that should be flattish this quarter. But what happens in Lupin is they are also expected to see erosion in one of their large assets, which is generic Suprep. I think that is about $70-80 million in our estimates for the company, and that should see erosion this quarter because a lot of other companies have launched a copy of Suprep. So that erosion should offset some of the gains they are going to get from this Mybetriq launch, and they also had a few other launches this quarter. But I think this erosion should be steeper for them. So more or less, I think a bit of growth or flattish numbers is what I would see for Lupin.
All right, just a final question before we let you go, Vishal. You said Zydus Life is likely to be the pick of the pack when it comes to numbers this time around, but the stock, if you compare it to something like a Lupin, in the last 6 months, it's rallied about 64-65% as well. So from a valuation standpoint, what do you think is most attractive in the space right now, and which of these stocks do you think has a lot more valued or priced in the current price that there is?
I think structurally, among the larger names, we prefer Sun Pharma and Cipla, where we think these companies can compound longer. And so these are not as much driven by one-off opportunities as the other companies. So the concentration in the US business for the other companies is much higher. So that is why we prefer Cipla and Sun over the others among the larger names.
Okay. Just quickly, wanted your thoughts on 2 stocks, Divi's Labs, in terms of sales, what could they report in terms of margins this time, as well as Sun Pharma when it comes to the global specialty business?
Right. So on Divi's, I think we are expecting strong growth in CRAMS, about 12-13% growth in CRAMS, while on generics, we are expecting high single-digit growth, mid to high single-digit growth. That's where we are. In terms of margin, I think they should be around, on EBITDA, they should be around 31-32% EBITDA margins. So I think the quarter should, on a YOY basis, Divi should look good, but on a QOQ basis, it should be weaker because the fourth quarter for Divi's is generally a high base, wherein they do book large part of their CRAM sales in the fourth quarter. So weaker on a QOQ basis, but a decent numbers on a YOY basis. And on Sun Pharma, I think the specialty numbers, we are expecting a bit of decline, and that decline would be on account of seasonal weakness in this quarter. So we are looking at QOQ decline in the Sun Pharma specialty sales, but on a YOY basis, the specialty sales should grow mid-teens.
Okay, all right, Vishal, we're going to let you go on that note. Thanks very much for joining in and speaking with us and giving us your perspective on what we can expect in the pharmaceutical space this quarter. We need to take a short break, but up next, we'll get you a lot more stocks in focus.